Now, speaking of all this woke stuff, earlier today, or earlier a few days ago, I think earlier today actually, a guy named Vivek Ramaswamy. I hope I'm saying his name right. I'm probably butchering it, but he has written a book called Woke Inc. And he said something about China that I think is very interesting. He was talking about in this interview in the context of how you can't call the coronavirus the Wuhan virus because apparently that's racist. He said the following sentence. And we have to ask ourselves why. And the answer is crystal clear to me. It is that China has mastered the art of using wokeness as a geopolitical tool against the United States. He goes on to say, and if there is any doubt about that, just look at the comments of Xi Jinping when European leaders pressed him last year on their human rights records. He cites Black Lives Matter as a way of saying the US is no better. Their top diplomat in Alaska last month falsely claiming that Black Americans are being slaughtered, and he hopes the US does better on human rights. So Ramaswamy here is really suggesting that Xi Jinping is using wokeness and implanting the seeds of wokeness into American society through his propaganda machine. Now, we understand that China is a very, very malevolent and authoritative, powerful, propagandistic force throughout the world. And I mean, you know that they have ships down in Latin America. They have this Belt and Road Initiative. They are investing a lot in Caribbean countries and signing these sort of loan agreements that really the other countries who are much poorer can't really win. They are really involved in Africa. I mean, the Uyghur stuff. There's just so much going on. How should we understand all of this stuff? How do we make sense of all of the various aspects of Chinese manipulation in the world? And also, do you believe that a lot of woke ideologies are being used by China to destroy or deride America?
Well, I know what they're capable of. And I know the party's policy, the strategy back in 2016 to bring down America, to infiltrate into America by actually manipulating the US elections and getting involved with campaigns, train their candidates, and even invest in some congressional district where the vote difference only 10,000 votes or 5,000. And if they invest there, hire their workers, and they can actually, influence the voters' choices. They also have infiltrated into the United States through Confucius Institute. The Chinese government funded so-called, they call that cultural organization to teach language and culture in the United States, all over the Western democracy countries, Chinese language and culture, but actually they're trying to promote China, to make China look good, make a party look good. They also give schools, universities money. So follow the money, and you take their money, you have to sign the agreement to say, I will comply with the China laws. Chinese government have been very, very smart, deliberate to infiltrate into America and Western democracy countries without finding one shot. That's why they can talk you down like that. They know our society fabrics is very weak when it comes to racial tension. So they use that against us, and by also infiltrating into our media, our social media. Whenever I post something about against CCP, I don't get lots of feed. People don't get my post. And whenever I have questions about virus, and I got a warning from Facebook, are you sure you want to talk about this? Your post has a COVID, has a vaccine in it. It just, I'm so sick of that, because every day I face that. So I was not offended when people were talking about China virus, because the Chinese started in China talk Wuhan virus every day, Wuhan virus, before we got shut down. So we were not offended. So why would Chinese people be offended here just because a president was talking like that? And they're still talking about UK variants, Spanish flu, South America, South Africa variants. See, people are not offended when they use other countries' names. It just means the origin of the virus. And the people don't understand that the left want to speak for us, even though they don't care how we truly feel. Then they always have some people who bought into their propaganda to go to another side. Let me tell you, the anti-aging rallies, end of March, they had. Guess who was involved? Chinese consulate in San Francisco, in New
really?
York. Yes.
Wow.
Yes, I have a Chinese piece of document, Twitter, and showing you where to go. And consulate said where to go, what signs to hold. I watched a video. There are lots of Chinese share information like that. The one guy holding anti-aging hate, and with another sign to say, hold the CCP accountable. And he was told to go away, take down that CCP sign. And also that, and there is a talk about they are trying to support Andrew Yang to run for New York City as a mayor, So whenever you have Chinese consulate promote certain candidates, I'm always very suspicious. Why, right? Why? And then they organize events like this. Don't know if money is behind it or not, but I remember when the Hong Kong people faced some opposition in overseas countries, like the Hong Kong people who support democracy movement. Now you have other mainland Chinese opposed to that in Australia, in Germany, in England. Those all organized by the consulates, pro-party people. And their propaganda machine called the United Front. It's huge. It's probably the largest propaganda machine in the world was the Xinhua News Agency. People need to be worried about it and be cautious about it. Don't just buy into rhetorics. Remember, they want to achieve their so-called China dream designed by Chairman Xi. That China will take over the United States as the #1 economic power and political power in the world. And the United States is their probably #1 target. And they feel like they have succeeded. And because now we kind of have one party rule now in this country, right? And they're friendly towards CCP. They never call them out. When China covered up the coronavirus spread, they let people get out of Wuhan after they shut down Wuhan, but 5 million people traveled all over the world, all over China. They did not hold them accountable. They continue to fund the World Health Organization, which helped China to cover up to say the virus was not from human to human back in January even. So there are lots of things can make dots connect. But our media do not report that. They don't even call China covered up. They do not ask China to report their true numbers. China coronavirus case numbers and death numbers just stopped last summer. No reporting. But all they targeted was our own president, his administration, instead of calling China. And what they did to Hong Kong even recently, imposed the national security on Hong Kong. So it's like they really don't have much credibility anymore. I encourage people to look for your own source of truth and the data and the information. They cannot trust mainstream media anymore because it is infiltrated by lots of propaganda and CCP influencers and even money. So be aware.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so we're winding down here a little bit, but before we go, I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much, Lily, for being here, for having this interview. You are a wonderful voice, and again, I think that your message is very important. But before we go, I want to ask, how do we stop it from happening here? How do we stop this from taking over our institutions, taking over the minds of Americans, convincing them of a reality that does not exist, then having them act as if that reality is true and real? Because we understand that is what happens whenever a dictator rises to power. And Hannah Arendt, the political theorist, actually mentioned this. She called it total domination. She said what happens is that the totalitarian anoints a single concept, and in this concept they destroy the idea of freedom and merge it under that concept. Hitler did it with like the Aryan race. It happens. Marxist organizations do it with like the class distinctions. How do we stop this from happening here? How does the sort of majority of Americans that want to beat this kind of stuff, how do they thwart this enemy that is looming on the horizon?
Well, the silenced majority got to speak up. I know some of you are very afraid, very worried. You got canceled, you lost your job, or you might get fired. And there are lots of things could happen to us. I understand that. But in one way or other, if you fight smart, you can still voice yourself. You can talk to people privately, and you can educate the young people to know the truth. And I think the young people are the one who were used, kind of like Mao used the red guards. They were religiously following this walk culture and think that they know everything, and they bought into it, and their life can be end up be like a red guards, very sad, and they will regret it. So as a silent majority, we have to be courageous, and I even encourage Democrats and liberals to speak up, because as I said, this is not a left or right issue or Democrat Republican issue. This is about our country. I still have hope for America. Well, personally, I have no place to go. China is still one party dictatorship. They're committing cultural genocide, and biggest human rights abuser in the country. People have no voting rights, no gun rights, no free speech. I have to fight for all those rights in my new country, my refugee in America. We have no place to go. Chinese immigrants like me. So I encourage people, do what you can locally. Locally, you can support a bill, oppose bill. You can go to your local school board meeting to stop them teaching our students and racism. The critical race theory biology is basically promoting racism, make one group race of kids hate another group, and create more division. And also, please, as American citizens, let's not demonize each other. You know, I don't demonize people on the other side. And even though they disagree with me, I always trying to be nice and respectful. That's how you can have a calm conversations and trying to persuade them, because lots of people in the middle just don't know what's going on. They're confused and they're living in fear because the media politicians want them to live in fear. Fearful people are easily to be controlled and manipulated, and want them totally rely on government as their saviors. We need to rely our families, our neighbors, our communities, and our churches. And we need to help each other in the time of needs, but not to fight each other. We need to push back on this identity politics. And one person say, no, it's not good enough, try 10, 100, thousands, millions. That's how you keep your country, our country, as a free country. Because let me tell you, if China becomes the number one in the world, would you like to be dominated, controlled by one party in the world? It's called the Communist Party.
Right.
They're everywhere now. They are using Belt Road Initiative to buy other poor, smaller countries, and they use their second economic power to even get, you know, Major League Baseball to have a deal with them, so they can come out to accuse Georgia voting ID law is racist, even though about 70% of Black people in Georgia support voter ID law. You tell me who is divisive, who is put money above the principles, and who, you know, is really dictators in this country. In lots of silence, the majority of people feel like, oh, they're so helpless now, feel like this is a crazy world, everything's upside down, it's insane. We just had a coach in New Hampshire because he wanted his students to run track without wear a mask. He got fired. Is that a wear mask to run healthy? You know, you cannot breathe fresh air. How do you perform as an athlete? So people are losing common sense, and their fire people just disagree with them. It is American cultural revolution right now. So we have to save our country by stand up and push back to say enough is enough. This is our bottom line. We need to get all the people to push back, resist, and together.
Absolutely. No, you know, the great Ronald Reagan once said in his very legendary speech, A Time for Choosing, that America is the last stand for freedom. If we lose it here, it's over. He said that in the support of the Great Barrier Goldwater. And I think those words are even truer than they were back in the 60s when he said that speech. when the USSR was a very clear and looming threat. Because guess what? The threat was outside, but now the threat's inside. So, Lily, thank you so much for your time. If you have any last things you'd like to say before we go, I'd appreciate it, but you are wonderful, and I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. And you are young man, full of wisdom for your age. And actually, you give me hope. I hope for more and more young people will start to look into truth and data information on their own. Do not rely on their professors, their schools, and all their even employers. And people need to wake up. We are in a crisis situation. I'm very worried. I'm trying my best to educate people with my personal experience and personal stories. If you want to follow me, go to Lily for Liberty. And I have YouTube also, Lily Tom Williams. And actually I shared my interview with you on my YouTube too. So everybody got to do your part. And together we can still keep this country as a free country, not to run down, not to taking over by the Marxist and communist. So let's do it. Thanks, Christian.
No problem at all. And thank you so much for coming on. And everyone else, thank you. And please stay pensive. Bye-bye.